Hello, everybody. This is joint work on the choice of classifier handshape in Catalan Sign Language, a corpus study. And here you have an overview of what we're going to present today in this talk. So let's first introduce what classifier constructions are. So there are lexically specified handshapes used to map the position or the movement of the object referenced by the handshape used. And classifiers can have three main functions: to substitute, manipulate, or describe. And for each function, we find different classes of classifiers. For substituting, we find entity classifiers and body part classifiers. For manipulating, we find handling classifiers. And for describing, we find size and shape specifiers. But this talk will focus only on the first function and mainly on entity classifiers. So focusing on entity classifiers, they represent classes of reference, for example, vehicles or humans, and their movements or locations. And we have an example in 1, so 1A and 1B. So both examples mean a person standing. So this meaning can be expressed using a classifier construction with one handshape, like in 1A, or a classifier with two handshape, like in 1B. So the goal of this paper is to examine the factors that influence the handshape choice in classifiers constructions in Catalan Sign Language. And we're only going to focus on the study of the one and the two handshape, including variants with bent and moving fingers and thumb extension. The type of reference we're going to analyze are only singular anthropomorphic reference, and this will be done through a corpus study with quantitative analysis. So the data used for this study are from the Catalan Sign Language corpus, which was already glossed. And we used 53 minutes of story retelling of 3 episodes of a Canary Row video. And we used data from a total of 29 Catalan Sign Language signers. As you can see from the table, they come from different areas of Catalonia. They are from 3 different age groups. Most of them are signers who acquired Catalan Sign Language from birth, and we have both female and male signers. So for the data annotation, we use the ELAN software. There were 2 annotators and 2 reviewers. So we also did an inter-annotator reliability over 24% of the data, which turned into an overall congruence between the 2 annotators of almost 82%. In the data annotation, we annotated different aspects, as you can see in this table, but the relevant ones for this talk are classifier, predicate, handshape, so whether the classifier had a 1 handshape or 2 handshape, and all the different variants of them. Whether the classifier was expressing only manner, only path, or path and manner at the same time. We looked at whether the action expressed was controlled or uncontrolled, and it was also possible to mark whether this was unclear. And we looked at the discourse status of the referent that the classifier was referring to. So whether the referent was introduced, maintained, reintroduced, or whether this wasn't clear to determine. And in order to annotate the discourse status of the referent, we also had a separate tier for a clause segment where we were annotating the different clauses with the respective reference. For the annotation of the 1 and the 2 handshapes, we consider combination of bent fingers, moving fingers, thumb extension, and only for the 2 handshape, whether the fingers were spread or not. And in the picture in the slide, you can see an example of possible combinations of the 2 handshape, so with spread and non-spread fingers, and possibilities of moving or non-moving fingers, extended or bent fingers. From our data annotation, we found a total of 377 instances of classifiers. Only 52 instances were expressed using the one handshape, while 325 instances were expressed using the 2 handshape. So as you can clearly see, the data were skewed, and this is very important to take into account and to keep in mind for the analysis and the data we'll present. So we performed statistical analysis for all factors, and we looked at the handshape choice between the one handshape and the 2 handshape and all their variants. And then we also focused only on the 2 handshape, and we looked at the 2 handshape compared to 2 handshape with bent fingers, and 2 handshape compared to 2 handshape with moving fingers. So the statistically significant factors that we found to influence the choice between the 1 and the 2 handshapes and their variants were the expression of manner, the discourse status of the referent, and whether the action was controlled or uncontrolled. Let's look at manner. So the 1 handshape was used proportionally more for path only, as you can see in the graph marked with the violet color, while the 2 handshape was used proportionally more often to express both path and manner at the same time, as we can see marked in pink in the graph. Given that our data were skewed, it's important to also look at the absolute numbers. And as we can see in the table, the 2 handshape was also often used to encode path only. So from our results on the expression of manner, we can see that if a motion event encodes manner alone or path and manner at the same time, then there is a strong preference for the use of the 2 handshape. And this is due to different reasons, we think. The first one is that path is by default always present in verbs of motion. And if manner alone needs to be expressed as an information, then it's disregarded when using classifier constructions. But in general, manner is a semantic specification that can be added to path when using classifier constructions. As we can see, for example, in the example in the slide, which means a cat is climbing up the pipe. And here we see the use of a classifier construction where both manner and path are expressed at the same time. Another factor that was statistically significant in the choice of the one handshape and the two handshape was the discourse status of the referent that the classifier construction was expressing. So we found that the one handshape was used proportionally more for reintroduced reference, as we can see marked in pink in the graph, while the two handshape was used proportionally more for maintained reference, as we can see marked in violet in the graph. Again, it's important to look anyway at absolute numbers, and we see that the two handshape was as well often used with reintroduced reference as well. So from our data, we can observe that in general, the two handshape is more frequently used to express maintained reference. And we think that this is due to the fact that newer and detailed information are usually performed by maintained reference. And also the fact that the two handshape is morphologically more complex than the one handshape, and this helps to add new meaning. And this is also in line with what we found before in the expression of manner. And so a more morphologically complex handshape, like the two handshape, is indeed used to encode together path and manner. So in the example we find here in the slide, this means that a cat is going down the pipe and then the cat is rolling down the street. So we first see that the cat is reintroduced with a lexical sign, and then the classifier handshape used to refer to the reintroduced cat is handshape 1. And here we see the only path is expressed using the one handshape. And the following classifier that is used is maintaining the referent. And again, we see that with the two handshape, both path and manner are expressed. For the last statistically significant factor, so whether the action expressed by the one handshape or the two handshape was a controlled or uncontrolled action, we found that the one handshape is used proportionally more for controlled actions, as we can see in violet in the graph, while the two handshape is used proportionally more for uncontrolled actions, as we can see marked in pink. Again, it's important though to look at the absolute numbers. So the two handshape was also found often to express controlled actions. So in order to better understand the data that we just presented, it's important to point out that the type of actions and verbs present in the data annotated was limited, but we could still divide them between controlled and uncontrolled actions. And importantly, in the controlled actions, we had only intransitive and ergative verbs. So verbs that take only one argument, which is the subject, and which correspond to the agent. So verbs like walk, go down the stairs, climb up or down. In the uncontrolled class, we find intransitive and accusative verbs. So verbs that take only one argument, which is the subject, and correspond to a theme. Verbs like fall or be thrown out. So what we found then is that controlled actions can be expressed by the one or the two handshape. And If we look at these data cross-linguistically, differently from ASL but similarly to other sign languages, both type of verbs, so both intransitive, unaccusative, and unergative verbs, can be expressed using an entity classifier. So after looking at the factors that influence the choice of the one and the two end shape, we focus only on the factors that influence the use of the variants of the two hand shape. So we first looked at the two hand shape in comparison to the two hand shape with bent fingers. In order to do that, we grouped the different end shape under the two hand shape, where we have all the variants that didn't have bent fingers, while in the group of the two hand shape with bent fingers, we had all the variants where bent fingers were used. The only statistically significant factor that we found influencing the choice between these two end shapes was gender. So we found that women use bent fingers more often than men. As for the two end shape in comparison to the two end shape with moving fingers, so in the category of the two hand shape with moving fingers, we add all the variants where the fingers were moving. And the factors that statistically influenced the choice between these two end shape were manner, controlled, and gender. Age was not an influencing factor, and discourse status was not statistically significant, but showed a tendency. Looking at what we found for the choice of these two end shape, we see that when expressing manner, the two end shape with moving fingers is used to express both path and manner, as we expected, while the two end shape was used to express path only. As for discourse status, reintroduced reference tended to be expressed more often with the two hand shape instead of the two hand shape with moving fingers. As for controlled actions instead, they tended to be expressed more often with moving fingers. And as for gender, men tend to use moving fingers instead of the two hand shape. Concluding, in Catalan Sign Language, manner, discourse status, and whether the action is controlled or uncontrolled are the factors that influence the choice of the one or the two end shape. But it's also important to remark that the data presented here were skewed, and that also there was a limited number of different verbs. But overall, our take-home message is that the morphological complexity of the two end shape compared to the one end shape is crucial in the expression of path and manner together, and also to refer to maintain reference. This is due to the fact that the morphological complexity of the two end shape adds new meaning, and also that manner is a semantic specification added to path. These are the authors that contributed to this work. And we thank you very much.